We're good? Good evening and welcome everyone to the Ravenswood City School District Governing Board meeting of March 24th. I will open the meeting at 6:30 p.m. and I will take roll call. Vice President Shabomaheen? Here. Trustee Alexander? Here. Trustee Polito is absent. Trustee Bloom? Here. I myself am present. Quorum is present. Now we will move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. And now we will move on to item number 3, which is closed session. Before we go into closed session, this is an opportunity for the public to make comments on anything that will be discussed during closed session. As I see none, we will enter into closed session at 6:31 p.m. Thank you. Continue, I will report back on matters that were discussed during closed session. For item 3A, there was discussion. For item 3B1, there was discussion. For item 3B2, there was discussion. For item 3C, there was discussion. For item 3D, there was discussion and direction was given. Now we will move on to item number 5, which is from the floor. So if there's anyone from the public who wishes to discuss any matters that aren't agendized, this is your time. Wonderful. Moving on to item number 6, which is our consent agenda. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item 6, consent agenda.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, item 6.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item number 7, which is from the business department. I will kick it off to item 7A, which is the 22-23 budget update.
Good evening, trustees. That was the fastest switch to the business office I think we've ever had.
You're
So
welcome.
I want to talk for a little bit tonight just about where we are with the SY 22-23 budget. And then mainly I want to turn it over to the principals who are here tonight just to talk through their proposed budgets for next year. So just wanted to give a quick sort of update, specifically looking at the school budgets. We are projecting a slightly larger enrollment, and that basically is because we're projecting a full transitional kindergarten class, primarily for budgeting purposes. We think the actual number of students will be a little bit lower than that, but we are kind of projecting the full TK at this point. In total, because in part of the TK projection, we are increasing the amount of money that we're spending at our schools. The school budgets overall are going to be a little bit bigger. But overall, they're roughly about the same. So it's not sort of a big shift, not sort of a small shift, relatively just small increase. And the per pupil amounts are roughly the same as we'll see in a bit. So goals for today is really just to have the principals have a chance to talk about their budget and their instructional vision. And then with the board sort of direction on these school budgets or sort of feedback, we want to start hiring as soon as we can to try and get as many positions filled for the start of next school year. Traditionally, the board may remember, we've waited until June to get the budget sort of formally approved or get direction on it. And that's too late to really get meaningful hiring going. So we're changing up the process here a little bit, but in a way that I think it makes it sort of more transparent and more understandable for the community and for us to get staffed. So, oops. So this is the slide we presented at the last time. And so we're just highlighting sort of things that are on the school budgets. Remember, we have our sort of base revenue. This is how much we have from LCFF, federal, state funds, our rental revenues, the Peary grant. And then we have this sort of additional set of stimulus funds. The board may remember, the community may remember, we received a large amount of stimulus funds. We're trying to smooth those out over a multi-year period. This reflects the contribution we discussed last time of an additional $3 million on top of our base revenue allocation. And then there's a couple of things, namely the REF compensation funds and the ELO grant, which will increase our total revenue to quite a bit higher, $43 million, but are not necessarily included in the school budgets at this point. So how do we get the school budgets? It's pretty simple. We took a per pupil amount, we multiplied that by their enrollment forecast, and that then generated the school budget. We did make some small adjustments based on some site-specific works. Bellhaven has CSI funds, so it got a little bit more money. Costa Blaze is a little bit smaller, so need a little bit more money to sort of be balanced. The middle school has received some specific grants targeted for the middle school, so their overall budget's a little bit higher on a per pupil basis. And you can see that here. Overall, the light blue is the per pupil amount each school got last year, and the dark blue is the per pupil amount each school got this year. These are thousands of dollars. That's different than our total per pupil. It's just the school budget amount of how much they got per pupil. And what you can see is that overall, we did two things. One, everybody went up a little bit. And then two, they're a little bit closer together. We're trying to make them sort of more overall even. And we achieved that this year. We're a little bit closer to even than we were last year. There's still some gaps. So CCRMS still has about 13% more than Castano. But overall, we're sort of closing those gaps as we go. These amounts, by the way, the 22-23 amounts, don't include the salary increases. So the overall amount we're spending per pupil will have gone up even more once we account for those changes. That doesn't necessarily mean that each school got more money, right? If there was an enrollment decline, the school would have got fewer students, so their total amount of money would have gone down. But overall, in large part due to the expansion of TK, most schools do have more money overall. That'll also just help us sort of seeing where the money goes. Most of our money goes towards staff. And most of the stuff that we spend on schools, so you may remember this term, SSBC, which is school services budgeted centrally. These are things that we actually have on the central budget that are directly serving schools. But most of the sort of supports that are directly going to schools are on those school budgets. So what you'll be seeing today is sort of most of the instructional part of the budget, which again is heavily focused on people. So without further ado, if there's any questions, I'll hand it over to the school principals to walk through their individual budgets. I think we're starting alphabetically with Falcon.
Thank you. Before, oh no, you can go. I just want to say thank you to our principals. I love the swag you all are wearing. I think that's y'all look great. But I also want to thank you because spring break is upon us and you all could be anywhere else but here. And I just want to commend you all for taking the time just to come in. They're supposed to be free and they're presenting for us. So that's why I just want to say a really big thank you to you all.
All right. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent. So looking at Belhaven, we are looking at approximately 410 students, which means that we're decreasing by 10%. And then our total per pupil allocation is around that number-ish, right? We never know exactly until we get to the year. But we are then looking to increase a little bit more to about 15%. So some things that we are moving forward with is that we would like to add another 1.5 FTE for reading intervention. So that would bring us to a total of 4 reading intervention teachers. And then slightly increasing our CSI funds and shifting it over from professional development funds over to instructional materials. This year, we're still trying to get a grasp on what's going on in the classrooms and what we really need. And then so we want to be able to have a little bit of extra funding on the materials side. So that way we can help support our teachers where they need it in the classrooms. Something that we are also changing is that we are removing a class size reduction teacher. So we're shifting around some of our teaching assignments. That's all I've got because it's only in March right now. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you. We'll move it over to Castano.
Good evening, trustees and superintendent. Thank you for having us here tonight. As you can see from this slide here, we will be declining in enrollment by approximately 11% from this year. Nonetheless, we will be experiencing a 19% per pupil increase in ability to spend money, which is always a good thing. For our new budget this next coming year, the things that we want to do is first and foremost add a performing arts teacher to our staff. We are, after all, a school of the arts, and we believe that it's important for us to have more arts on our campus than perhaps at Bellhaven or Los Robles. We also intend to increase our, I did make the changes. Yes, we did some additional changes from here, but let me back up. We would like to increase our reading intervention by 0.5. What we have found is that last year we did increase reading intervention on our campus, adding it to kindergarten, and we found tremendous success in children's growth as readers. So we want to continue that and expand. Because even though we do currently have 1.5 reading intervention on our campus, there is still tremendous need. So we hope to be able to increase our reading intervention people. The last thing that we wanted to do was to increase our school support staff on our campus so that we can have the yard be a safer place for children. Our ODR, our office discipline referrals, tell us that the places where children are engaging in the most challenges happen during recess and lunch, and therefore the need to have additional school support staff out on the yard is important. We also want to add for non-personnel additions, field trip money. This past year, there was none allocated to field trips. We want to add that. We want to make sure that our children have access to art residencies and to make sure that our TK classrooms have startup funds as well. The only thing that we're removing from the budget is class size reduction teachers. And we had 2 this year, but we will not need them next year because of a decline in enrollment. And even with class size reduction, even without class size reduction, we're expecting our upper grade classrooms to be no larger than 26. So it's still a manageable number. Thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to clarify, Robin, I think you were looking at that and shocked that we still had the 0.5 ELD and 0.5 administrative assistant, but thinking that we want to ensure ELD instruction is owned by all of our classroom teachers. And then also, how do we utilize our outreach coordinator and our campus coordinator to support in the office for our administrative assistant? So those are intended to be there.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Thank you.
Hello, hi, good evening. So there's our chart. I guess maybe one thing that we can highlight is the 31% enrollment change. That's an increase, and the reason for that, before I became the principal at Los Robles, the enrollment had declined to the extent that there was only 1 kinder class every year. And that happened for about 3 years. And so when I came in, one of the first things we tried to do is try to increase the enrollment. And so we went from 1 kinder to 2 kinders. And so we've been trying to do that every year. And that's our goal. This year, we're adding a TK. So not only the 2 kinders plus the TK. So that's why you see that kind of jump in there. And that's the goal. Our goal is to increase enrollment. And we're going to continue to put a lot of effort in that. Next slide, please. A couple of things maybe to emphasize here. Just based on this year and the experiences that we've had this year, we have learned that really we're making the biggest impact with students, their growth, their development, by adding more adults in the picture. So both academically as well as social and emotional. The reading intervention, for example, is something we need to help our students keep growing academically. Items like the Playworks coach, campus relations coordinator, these are all different ways that we can add more touch points to our children so that they can continue to grow and we can continue to support them. This transition back will be ongoing. And so it wasn't just this year. We will continue working on this next year as well. We really don't know until when. That year in the distance learning year, its impact, it's really difficult to gauge. And we're still trying to support our students the best we can. The other piece of that puzzle is adding more resources to support enrichment experiences. So things like field trips, things like parent meetings, giving our students, our teachers, our community an opportunity to work on our campus. We've been doing some planting, some spring planting, some landscaping projects. We worked with East Palo Alto Academy recently to help us with our landscaping project, and we'll continue to do things like that. They're not major budget items, but those things do cost money. And so they will be there, right? So if you want to go out there and buy some plants, that costs money. If you want to buy some soil, that'll cost money. Even some of the other items that we've done to serve the community during Thanksgiving, for example, our families got together and we were putting food together in boxes. Those boxes cost money. During the Christmas toy drive, we were also donating toys to some of the nearby preschools, right? Putting that together costs money. There are other things that we do to collaborate with the community that don't cost money, but we'd like to kind of include those. Recently, we teamed up with Canopy and we went to Jack Farrell Park. We planted some trees by La Cazuela. Those things don't necessarily cost us money, but they do take up some time. And so those are things that will not necessarily impact the budget in a significant way, but they're part of what we do and part of what our vision is at Los Robles. That's kind of it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, I do have a question.
Yes.
On the other presentations, it said like a halftime reading intervention teacher. I want to know, I mean, at some point, it doesn't have to be urgent, but what is the breakdown of
Full-time.
your-
Those are full FTE. So the reading intervention, we budgeted for two full-time.
Okay, so
Reading
you're
intervention.
looking for 2 FTE reading intervention
Right.
teachers, one full-time playworks coach?
One full-time playworks coach, one additional campus relations coordinator. We have one now.
Okay,
We want to increase that to 2.
and
Which,
you have one playworks coach now and you want to increase it to 2?
no, we have one and we want to keep one.
And you want
Uh,
to keep one? So
the one-
that's not an increase, that's just a same?
Well, the one we had this year was more of a halftime, actually even less than a halftime.
Okay,
And so that's where that's going to probably cost us a little more because we're not paying for one full-time playworks coach. But we realize the benefit of having a full-time one, and that's more of a staffing issue. And it's not necessarily that we didn't have the money for it. It's just staffing has been incredibly difficult this year, as you already know.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to go up 4% to 550 students. We have a grand total of 11 grand for our per pupil allocation because we have all the extra things that middle school gets to have. So I am sorry. I'm usually loud enough that people don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to hold it now that I took it out of the thing. Okay. Do you want me to do it again? YouTube, do you need me to do it again? Okay. Okay, next slide, please. So we added on a whole bunch of positions initially, and so we're realizing some of these positions don't necessarily need to be covered because of our extended day. Some of the teachers can take on things like a math intervention for the year because they have an extra period that they can teach. We have been using some consultants that we're reallocating the funds because we're building capacity up within our own people. And so I love Brackney Consulting, but we don't necessarily need them. We just like them a lot now. We had the student culture coordinator position vacant for the whole year, so it's been difficult to fill, so we're just going to close it. We had virtual field trips, but we can do things in real life again, so we're going back over to real life. And we over budgeted for hourly. So I'm just cutting off the things that we did not spend for, after school hourly things. So we're definitely expanding in our competitions, in our just our, like, we're taking our robotics team to Texas for Worlds, and I didn't have that in the budget. So we've got to, we have to now future add those types of things in because we will always be world champions. And our music group is going and competing in the music at the park, which is Great America. So all of those fees, we did not have all of those done. So we went to electives. Electives put in a bigger budget so that we can add to that. And of course, our Washington, D.C. trip was initially canceled. So all of the funds rolled over. So we didn't have to allocate for Washington, D.C. this year because it's already paid for. And actually part of next year is already paid for. So we had to increase that to make sure that it's still, the rest of it is covered for next year. And then we had some pilot funding that we don't need anymore because we will be adopting, but we need to transfer that to training funding. And high school transition tier 2, 3 support position was one that was eliminated before that we are realizing we really, really need. So it was allocated amongst other people. So we're building that position right now and making sure that we have a really good focus back there. Any questions?
I believe that concludes our presentation on the school budgets. If the board has any feedback overall or on the specifics of any school budget, we're happy to have that now.
Do we have any questions from the board?
Through the chair, I'll just say thank you very much for the presentations and for everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful. As I see none, I just want the principals to know that you are under no obligation to stay. So have a great spring break. Okay. Moving on to item number 7B, which is the consideration to accept the fiscal year 2021 independent audit report.
Thank you. The district has been partnering with Shavin and Associates for the last several years to conduct our audits. We have Paul Pham from the Shavin and Associates here to present the findings of the 21-22 audit. So without further ado, here's Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will, and thank you, Board and Superintendent, for inviting me out to share with you the results of the June 30th, 2021 audit. And I am happy to announce that you guys had a clean audit, which is a really extraordinary thing if you think about it. If you think back from like the last year, you guys had distance learning to implement. Yeah, you guys had the distance learning to implement. You had all the CARES funding that came through that had to be spent in an appropriate way within a certain period of time. So a lot of stuff going on. And then in addition to that, from the year before, we had several findings. So you guys implemented our recommendation. Great job to Will and his team, and the district as a whole, because it does take a lot of coordination to make sure all the compliance items are properly followed. So very good job. What I'd like to do is just briefly just go over some of the standards we do and the scope of our audit, hit on some financial highlights for the year, and then right into the audit results. And then at the end, I'll open it up for any questions you guys might have. So as part of our audit, the AICPA, they issue statements of auditing standards that we adhere to. And because the district is a local government, the Government Accountability Office issues government auditing standards that we adhere to during our audit. And any agency that expends over $750,000 in federal awards, they're subject to a Single Audit Act, which is guided by uniform guidance by the Office of Budget and Management. So the district this year, we selected the Title I program, both the ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 programs, as well as the Corona Relief Fund for our major programs for auditing this year. So a lot of stuff going on in the federal program side. And then in addition to that, with respect to the district's state programs, the Education Audit Appeals Panel, they issue an audit guide every year for us to audit the California programs. And then lastly, because of the bond measure, there's the Proposition 39 that we adhere to, that we did in conjunction with the audit. So on to the financial highlights. You guys have a copy of the reports with you? Okay, so if I can reference you to page, let's see what page this is. Page 9, there's a, actually page 8, there's a table 2, then you'll see that the district's net position went down by $4.8 million. And this is mainly due to the issuance of $25 million in new bonds. So that brings down the district's net position. But if you go to the next page, table 2, you'll see that there's a lot of changes last year. Get to that myself. You'll see that program revenues were up 12.
Excuse me, what page again, sorry?
This is page 9.
9.
Yeah, table. Okay. Yeah, you see there's a table 2 there, the summary of changes in statement of activities. Yeah, so that table, the big changes there you'll see is that the program revenues went up by 12.3 million, and that's really from the CARES funding as part of the COVID response. And then the big news, property taxes were up 24.5 million, while grants and entitlements were down 25.8. That's the flip going to locally funded from LCFF. So that you'll see there. And on the next schedule, let me see, that is table 4. There you'll see that the district's fund balance overall was up $28.1 million, which is a huge increase overall. And that's mainly due to the increased revenue as well as the bond issuance that you guys had for the year. And specifically to the general fund, which is your main operating fund, you'll see that you guys were up 8.9 million up to a ending 16.4 million, which gives you guys a 3% reserve, which is a strong, healthy reserve. Something you want to consider. Will and I will probably discuss that. The fact that you guys are now flipped to a locally funded, that's something you want to consider, because there's a little bit more risk when you're depending on property taxes, because the property value is going up and down. So you typically want to maintain a higher reserve. But 3% is what the state recommends. So you guys are in a decent position there. All right. Before I move on to the audit results, any questions so far about anything? All right. So like I said, a nice clean audit with clearing all the findings we had from last year. With respect to the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements were fairly presented in all material respects. Internal controls over financial reporting and compliance, our audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls of financial reporting that we considered to be material weaknesses. And our tests disclosed no instances of noncompliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. And then with respect to your compliance, the district complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements of state programs. And then additionally, we had no significant uncorrected adjustments, no difficulties during the audit, and no disagreements with management. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I see no nods. Thank you. So as this is an action item, I will entertain a motion for item 7B.
I'll make a motion that we approve item 7B.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Now we will move on to item number 7. Oh, thank you.
Thank you to Paul and the team. They did a really great job and have been very patient and very willing to collaborate with us. We really appreciate it. This resolution is similar to a resolution the board passed about a year ago. It's a little bit of an unusual resolution in that it does contain a lot of blanks. What this resolution does is it authorizes district staff to proceed with issuing the remaining $20 million of unissued bond funds. What that means is right now the community approved a bond. The bond was for $76 million. Of that, we've actually got sort of converted to cash, about 56 million of that. And this is the remaining 20 million. So what we're looking to do now is take the sort of authorized bond amount, turn it into cash, and then use that to finish the work at the middle school. So this represents sort of the end of the measure approved in 2018 by voters for finishing out this bond. As mentioned before, the resolution is a little bit unusual in that there are some blanks. The trustees may remember the blanks refer to, they're intentional. They're for district staff to basically fill in as we get more information from the bond market. So when we go to sell these, it may turn out that the interest rates are 3.27% instead of 3.23%, and we need to be able to fill that in as we go. So this is very standard. It's the same, more or less, resolution that the board passed about a year ago on this topic, but it is just a little unusual in that regard. Just wanted to address that.
Any questions or comments from the board? As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item 7C.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 7C.
Thank you.
I'll second. I will second.
Oh, we read the resolution.
So resolution number 2021-2022-19. Resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds of the Ravenswood City School District in an amount not to exceed $20 million by negotiated sale. I wanted to say the number.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Now we will move on to item number 8, which is from the superintendent's office, and we have a COVID update. Woo.
Yeah, so we'll be presenting to the board an update from direction that was provided the last time we had a discussion around wearing masks, and our strategic pandemic recovery consultant, Ann Waterman Roy, will present the information and then allow the board to have a discussion.
Hello, everyone. So today we wanted to give you a brief update on the current conditions. So we said last time we wanted to bring back to you updated data about conditions in the district and then revisit and have a discussion. So current conditions. So happy to report that COVID cases have continued to stay low. So we've had 1, 2, 3 cases per week over the last couple of weeks. This week so far, we've had none. Hooray. And we are glad to see these numbers stay low. However, COVID is not over, and so none of us are assuming that this means it is gone, but we are happy to take the low numbers any week that they come. When you look at overall, looking at COVID cases in our Ravenswood district area overall, they are still higher than the county average, but they are significantly lower than they were when we presented 2 weeks ago. So what we did is we looked at the case rates by census tract, so we actually can report the data for Ravenswood district, not just East Palo Alto or Menlo Park. That's what we did last time, but I didn't explain that very clearly, sorry. So right now, we have 35 COVID cases per 10,000 people in the last 30 days. So what does that mean? That's about a third of our rate when we reported this 2 weeks ago. At that point, we were 98 cases per 10,000. And that's because those data still included some of the surge from February. So now we're at a much lower rate. It's still above the county average, but it's not the highest in the county overall, which is good to see. So we're getting back in the right direction. Still high, but not as bad as last time. And our vaccination rate has continued to grow slowly. Every time I go back and check the numbers, it's inched up another tenth of a point, which is a credit to the work happening in our community to continue to get people vaccinated. However, it is still below 90%, and it is among the lowest in our county overall. So we still have work to do there. What we can share now is updated data about our student vaccination rates. So since our last meeting, we've been able to get access to the county's, to the immunization records database. And our student services team looked up every student in the district individually to check their vaccination status. So credit to our student services team who are quite busy with any number of things. They really dug in and found the vaccination status for every kid. And what you can see here is by school, what are the current vaccination rates? So the blue bars are what % of kids have had their first dose. The red bar is who have completed 2 doses. Now, boosters get a little complicated because some of the middle schoolers are eligible for boosters because they got their second dose more than 5 months ago. So what you can see is that overall, 43% of Ravenswood students have completed their full vaccination of 2 doses. But when you actually look at whether students are boosted, we still have some work to do to get our eligible middle school students to get boosted. So actually we're at about 27.7% of district students are fully vaccinated and boosted if they're eligible. The boosting rate is a little complicated because it's only kids who are eligible. So you can't just do kind of a straight rate. We wanted to at least show how many kids have gotten their second dose at least. So that's where we are in terms of current conditions and an update on the data that we presented last time. We wanted to then shift into what does this mean for mask requirements? So I'm not going to reread this slide. This is what we presented last time. As we all know, the state has removed their requirement. They still strongly recommend it, but it's not required anymore. And we just wanted to have here so we could refer to it if you wanted a refresher, or for folks that are following along at home, what our current requirements are for masks in the district. So students and staff required to mask indoors, students and staff required to mask on buses, student transportation, students are required to mask outdoors, and visitors are required to mask indoors or outdoors. We also wanted to share with you what we have heard from some of our community members over the last 2 weeks. So we used these past 2 weeks, week and a half, to discuss with different community members how they felt about the mask requirements based on our current data. So looking at staff, conversations with leadership of RTA and our CSEA classified union have indicated they would prefer to continue requiring masks through the end of the year. Families, this was a topic of conversation at our DAC-DLAC meeting last week. And generally the committee members would prefer to continue mask wearing until there was more information and they were more comfortable without masks outdoors. And then partners, we spoke with a couple of partners about the situation, and most of them said, we just want to know what it is that the district, if the district makes a change, we would like to know so that we can follow what the district will do. We'll follow the district's lead. So it wasn't a general consensus of keep the masks, get rid of the masks. So we wanted to share this information about current conditions and also what we were hearing from community members to inform the board as you reconsider the question around masking. And that's it for the presentation. If there are any questions about either what was heard from community members or any questions about the data, happy to discuss those.
To the chair, I also want to just add, I did receive an email from one parent requesting that we don't wear masks. And this parent listed some articles why we should not wear masks. So I do want to acknowledge I did receive an email from a parent.
Do you have any questions or comments from the board?
Through the chair. I have a question/comment. If you go back to that second slide where it says how many, no, sorry, one more.
This one?
No, sorry, our
This one?
rates, yes.
Yes.
So I know it says 0, and I asked for clarification, so I just want to make sure everyone has the same clarification I do. This is for specifically tested on our campus, correct?
This is not just tested on our campus, but students or staff or contractors who were present on campus when they might have been infectious. So that does include anyone that we test on campus. Obviously, they are included. However, if a family member reports that their child tested positive outside, they test them outside of school and they tell us that that student is positive, we include them on this list in the week that we hear about it, usually. So like if we'd heard, say, on Friday, we would be included in last week's.
But that, it's if they were
If they were on campus
On
while
campus.
contagious. So for example, during the surge, we had a couple families that had kept one sibling tested positive and they kept the other kids home. And then they called back and said, 5 days later, oh, my other child has tested positive. But the other child was not positive when they were on campus. They've been home for 5 days, exposed to their sibling, and then they got positive. They were not actually exposing anyone else on campus, so we're not counting those. Also because it's sometimes those are harder because not as many people are reporting those.
Right. So I just want to make it clear that this count at 0 does not mean there are no students at our schools that have COVID, that are enrolled. Here, let me clearly state it. This 0 does not mean that there are no students who are enrolled in our schools that do not have COVID. This could include maybe 10 kids that have COVID but tested positive on Friday at home and then didn't go to school on Monday, and technically they weren't contagious because they weren't on campus on the day that they tested positive, right? So this number does not include and does not capture COVID cases of students who are not on campus. So I do want to make that clarification.
Yeah, and just one clarification on that. So you are correct. There are especially during the surge, we know that this was happening. Families were keeping their kids home and then they tested positive. So it's not a complete number of all enrolled students who were positive. However, just one slight clarification is if a student, we count someone as being potentially infectious on campus if they were on campus even 2 days before they tested positive. So for example, if a family calls us on Saturday and says, our kid tested positive on Saturday, we would consider them we are supposed to consider them as potentially have been infectious on Friday or Thursday. So then we would send exposure. That means that we got that call on Saturday, on Monday, we would send exposure letters out. We would do the response testing because they could have been infectious up to 2 days before the test was positive.
Okay.
But your overall point, absolutely correct. We know this could be understating.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make that clarification.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Thank you for your report. I am glad to see this. I just want to clarify because I've had some parents that talk to me. From my understanding, we have not mandated vaccinations for our students. We have not mandated vaccinations for our staff. We are continuing to monitor the situation and we will update policy accordingly. I personally, and I'll talk in first person, I would like to see the indoor mask mandate in play, but I want to discuss the outdoor mask mandate because I feel like we have the capacity and the space to be able to lift it and have kids out and about. And so I think that's the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, to see, and I've talked to staff. I've had families reach out to me. They want to lift the mask mandate altogether, but after hearing from our RTA, would like to keep the indoor mask mandate, but I want to talk about the outdoor mask mandate and how we would be able to move forward with that. And I'm not saying lift it like today. I would want to lift it like the week after people come back from spring break, but this is the conversation that I would like to have.
Through the chair, thank you for that presentation. Thank you so much. I know I'm trying to figure out this is the conversation to talk about whether it comes to the board for consideration of a particular vote. Yes. Okay. Just making sure I'm not talking out of turn. Well, yeah, I since we're giving our opinion, I think I'm with you because in terms of like keeping, continuing to wear masks. And that is, when I see those numbers, I think they look so good because of the protocols folks have taken, because of the safeties people have taken and precautions. And I think my fear is that if we no longer wear masks, at least indoors, those numbers could go up. I think this is something that's keeping people healthy personally. So even post spring break, well, even we are in spring break. So I would like to continue to wear masks, even though I know they can be a nuisance. I do think they're keeping us safe and healthy. Yeah. In terms of outdoors, I think that's a conversation that we can engage in, but at least to keep teachers and students safe. That's me.
The chair, so I'll chime in. In my personal practice, in my classroom, I wear my mask inside, even though it's not mandated by my district. So do 98% of my students on a regular basis. Outdoors, most people remove them, but there's still a huge number of students that keep them on anyway. So I would definitely want to encourage people to keep masks on indoors, regardless of what we decide. But outdoors, I think with the air and being able to breathe easily and for kids to be able to see each other's faces outdoors, I think is very important.
Through the chair. So I know I spoke my piece the last meeting, and I will reiterate, I do think that we should keep masks on indoors, which I think is a consensus here, or sounds like it's a consensus here. But I also think that we should keep masks on outdoors. And my reasoning is I have two small children, and they're in elementary school, the youngest, and if they take off their mask outdoors, they're most likely to lose their mask, not wear it when they come back indoors, or just, it's more likely that we're going to be going through a lot of masks and that they're going to be next to each other. Because I've seen my daughter when I pick her up, I've seen my son when I pick him up, they are right next to their friends. They are not 6 feet apart. And for teachers, and we just had a presentation from Castano, right, where the principal said some of the stuff that's happening, they need more staff to be present on playgrounds and lunch. And that's when kids are outdoors, in the playground and at lunch. And so if they're taking their masks off then, and there are not enough staff to supervise them to stay 6 feet apart, then how are we going to make sure that our kids stay safe? And we have low vaccination rates. We don't have the same numbers. Like if you pulled that chart back up, Menlo Park is at 100% practically vaccinated, right? We do not have those numbers. And as a community, I think that we're right, vaccines are not mandated. However, the reason some of these school districts are able to say that they're keeping kids safe is because, and not having masks indoors or outdoors, is because they're at that 100% vaccination rate. Our community is not at that 100% vaccination rate. And I, as a parent, I can tell my kids to wear their masks indoors and outdoors. They will most likely listen to me, but the peer pressure is so high that they will take their masks off. When I think about COVID and the ways that it impacts communities, and I talked about these statistics last meeting, they are going to impact our community way more than they are going to impact other communities. So maybe because my kids are vaccinated, my family is vaccinated and boosted, I do not live with elderly parents, we're gonna be safe, right? We're gonna maybe have a mild case, we're gonna get over in 2 days, we're gonna miss school, but we're not gonna be in the hospital. And from all accounts of what we're reading is that there is going to be a surge. And I know that we're all fingers crossed, hoping it's not going to happen, but that's what we're seeing around the world. And we have to be mindful that our rates in our community is not at 100%. It's at 80%, 87%, or I can't remember the number. And I'm sure the majority of those people who are not vaccinated are our youngest kids, our 5 through 12-year-olds. And that is the community that our district serves. And so we have to make decisions that people may not like, but I do think are best for our community. And this is why I highly recommend keeping masks on outdoors, because kids are not going to put their mask back on. They are not staying 6 feet apart, and they will be close to people and spread the virus. And so that's something that we have to keep in mind. And I would be happy if we could take the masks off indoors and outdoors, believe me. But I am also aware of how my kids are at school. And I know if they are told they could take their mask off outdoors, they will, and they won't be 6 feet apart. And there is possibility of spreading the virus. And so I think that we have to be really practical and understand that kids are resilient and they're still having a really good time and they are enjoying each other's company and socializing and able to understand and read each other and verbalize their needs if they can't always use their face. And I think that that's something that kids have been doing more of in these last 2 years, of course. And I think that we should just continue until the end of the school year with masks indoors and outdoors without making it confusing. Because if we have to come back in a few weeks because of a surge and tell kids that they have to put their masks back on after we've told them to take it off, that's going to be even harder for our staff and our principals and our teachers and the support staff that's out there to enforce. And so that is my opinion. Thank you.
Noted. I think do you have a good idea?
I believe I do, for sure, mask wearing indoors. And it seems like there is consensus to have masks off outdoors. But in terms of direction, well, I guess it's more of a question back to the board again, because I was asked if I had an understanding of.
I think the direction is, I think we're pretty across the board when it comes to indoor masks. I think with outdoor masks.
I think Trustee Shabomihane, did you want to have further conversation around the masks outdoors as well? I know that I got a sense from Trustee Latu and Trustee Alexander in terms of, but this is to have direction from the board if we going to continue with masks outdoors as well, right?
Do we have to vote on it? Like, I thought this was to give you direction and then you come back next meeting, we vote on it. Is this a vote?
Yeah, that's how I saw it as a conversation, given the data as it exists today. And then I think you're absolutely right that we're entering spring break, so coming back and, maybe a week and a half afterwards, looking at numbers again, looking at tests and all of that. And then, you coming back to the board perhaps after that with some kind of vote if the policy is going to change or and based on the conversations that we had here and then probably with the new.
Okay, so the next board meeting is not until April 14th.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. That gives us time.
Okay, so we'll continue with mask wearing.
Yeah, the policy is as is until changed.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. Moving on to item 8B, which is the central office reorganization presentation.
Thank you. All right, well, this presentation I would like to present to the trustees is looking how our central office can be organized to advance the strategic plan in support of our students and schools. So this is an opportunity for the trustees to review and then give direction to this proposal to streamline the functions and responsibilities of staff in our district's central office. Where do I point? Solomon, will this work? And so we are proposing a central office reorganization for 3 reasons. One is we want to be able to deliver around a few clear goals important to students. And we feel there are areas and resources that could be better utilized to serve our schools. And as a result, we would advance our strategic plan again in support of students in schools, have a more simple organization chart with a focus on improving instruction, and increased investments in schools and students. And again, this proposal is for the board to review, discuss, and give direction. So the purpose of the district office is to provide resources and operational supports to schools. We recognize that each of our 4 schools has its own identity, instructional approach, student and staff cultures, and measures of student success. We want to honor each school's unique identity and focus our central office on supporting schools to meet every student's day-to-day experiences and needs. So under the new central office organizational proposal, services, operations, and finances will be managed by a compact centralized team, which will focus on streamlining systems, ensuring great service for schools, and directing resources to help our 4 unique schools to meet the needs of each of their students. Our academic program, student services, and school management staff will be organized in a more decentralized structure, allowing support to flow where it is needed and in ways that meet the needs of each unique school community. Our new centralized organizational proposal will allow us to focus on our strategic plan and new initiatives. And that is to improve our teacher recruitment and retention strategy, to strengthen our communication with families and community, and to build out our information systems. So this organizational chart, again, streamlines functions and responsibilities, and this means more resources in schools and a better focus for our team on improving instruction. We plan to focus on 3 critical goals in the coming year: improving school culture and climate so students feel they belong and are supported in our schools; improving literacy, including accelerating growth for students reading below grade level, and ensuring students with special needs meet their personalized reading goals; and more importantly, quickly prepare multilingual learners to be reclassified. Improving math instruction is our 3rd goal, where we want to include accelerating growth in 2 common core standards of mathematical practices: ensuring students make sense of problems and persevere in solving them, and construct viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. These 3 goals were actually also pulled from our LCAP and our strategic plan. And some of these goals were more directed towards specific subgroups, and we expanded them to cover and encompass more students. So the proposed organizational chart would fall under 3 key functions: finance, facilities, and operations, teaching and learning, people, and strategy. And they would all be under the superintendent. So under facilities, under finance, facilities, and operations, we want to ensure the district's long-term financial health and use of funds. We're strategic. We want to provide excellent operational supports to schools and families. And under this category, under these key functions, is the finance team, technology, including our data, the maintenance, operations, and transportation, our child nutrition, and facilities. Under teaching and learning, we want to oversee and support direct instruction in schools, including supporting developing excellent staff and adopting curriculum and providing academic supports. And under teaching and learning, obviously our 4 schools would fall under that, meaning our school site administrators and the instructional team, educational services, who would then oversee special education services and health and wellness. And under people and strategy, we want to bring excellent employees throughout the organization, increase enrollment across our schools, advance strategic initiatives like the TK expansion, extended day, our strategic plan, and oversee the district's engagement and branding. And under this function, these functions, you would have our diversity, equity, inclusion coordinator, our human resources department, our family engagement, strategic projects, and then our communications.
Over the next few slides that I'll be sharing, I would like to share with you the overview of each position as the director level and above in the proposed organizational structure. And this next chart here will reference the criteria applied to determine the level of the leadership position. So if you see Chief Assistant Superintendent, Executive Director, Director, Assistant Director, Coordinator, and Specialist, we are going to primarily look at Director and above, which is the top line. And you can see here the difference between the two and the delineation. And with the Chief and Assistant Superintendent, you will see the accountability level is high. And in terms of risk and decision-making, you can see the comparison between the Director, Executive Director, Chief and Assistant Superintendent. And then when it comes to, say, the budget and supervision and evaluation responsibilities, you can also see the delineation between Director, Executive Director, Chief Assistant Superintendent. So now we'll be going into what each of the functions would look like in regards to roles and responsibilities. And I would like to start specifically with teaching and learning. You may not be able to see it clearly based on, you did receive this deck earlier. So just to speak to this specifically, I want to show here that we have on the right, the schools, where there are clear focused goals, and then how we want to make sure these goals are accomplished because of the implementation of plans, action, the allocation of funds to move these goals and to achieve these goals. And the accountability is the assistant superintendent and the principal, vice principals working together to ensure that tier 1 support, that tier 1 instruction is solid. Not just the academic, but also the health and wellness and the behavior strategies are all encompassed in that tier 1, which supports all students. Excuse me, my battery's about to die here. So the tier 1 instruction will be covered by the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning and the principal and instructional team. This is the first time you're hearing me say the term assistant superintendent. And so I will go into more detail the role of the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. But the key functions will be around instruction and teacher evaluation, curriculum adoption, professional development and training, assessment strategy, and then also the reporting that's involved, like around the LCAP and the school, the SARC. In regards to the Executive Director of Educational Services, you'll notice here that there are 2 key departments that have been merged together. That is the Student Services and the Special Education Services. We see this Executive Director Educational Services role really focusing on the multi-tiered systems of supports. That's tier 2, tier 3 at the academic and mental health level. And we see this role really overseeing the Assistant Director of Special Education, and then the coordinators of PBIS and mental health and health services. Again, I want to emphasize that this is going to be potentially the instructional cabinet to ensure that all tiers of instruction is provided and mainly held with the responsibility at the school sites. And we're not leaving the school sites alone. We want to make sure that we are providing the resources and the services to address tier 2 and tier 3. But the onus really is for the school sites to help deliver the tier 1 instruction. So I have an overview of each of the main roles in regards to Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, as well as the Executive Director of Educational Services. I can read each one, but I believe you did have this in advance. And so would you proceed that? Would you like me to go ahead and proceed through the slides? Yes. Okay. So we'll have this also available for the community, but each of the positions that are at the top line, director, executive director, assistant superintendent level, and chief level, will be available. So this is the overview of those positions. So under Chief People and Strategy. Is that where I am? Is there a question? Under the Chief People and Strategy, we are focusing on making sure that we are addressing the talent initiative, the student recruitment, the extended day, and TK UK expansion and strategic plan. These are some key initiatives under Chief People and Strategy. They will also be overseeing the Director of Human Resources, as I mentioned, the Coordinator of Community and Family Engagement, the DEI Coordinator, and our Strategic Projects Coordinator, along with Communications. And then we have a clear overview of both Chief People and Strategy, and the other role here with the top line is the Director of Human Resources. Under the proposed organizational chart under Finance, Facilities, and Operations, you will see Chief Finance, Facilities, and Operations role overseeing our Director of Operations, our Director of Technology, the Director of Operations, the Director of Budget, Executive Director of Technology, Facilities, and C&E.
I have a question. The name seems a bit long. Is that like the final name, or is it a name that's tentative?
I think the names and titles can change.
Okay.
Yes, no, it has not been approved. Yeah. I want to clarify that the positions and the overview are just their drafts, right? And then, for example, the Chief Facilities, Finance, Operations, and I already have the order out of place. Some of these positions, the titles have changed because there's been additional responsibilities, right? And so I don't see us recruiting another chief business official at this point in time.
Yeah.
However, we do see the position being adjusted to incorporate additional supervision and responsibilities. Pardon me? In the future, yes.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm totally okay with the actual title itself. Like that role is a necessity, but that role being called the Chief Finance, Facilities, Operations, like that could technically be all under like Chief Operations Officer. And they highlight XYZ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. One of the things I would like to point out here is that under the Executive Director of Technology, you'll notice that there is a section where it says data team. And what we wanted to do here was make sure that we had we wanted to streamline our operation systems around the data. And we wanted to make sure the data was available to those who wanted to pull information to help them make data-driven decisions. And right now for the end user, it is not functional at this time, and we need all of our data systems to be speaking to one another and to have clear data. And the effort here is to make sure that all of our information system is functional for those who need to use it. And again, we have descriptions of each of the roles. So the recommendation is for us to get direction from the board to continue planning for the central office reorganization with the goals of advancing the strategic plan, streamlining organization chart with the focus on improving instruction, increasing investment in schools and students. And then we want to be able to socialize the overview of the new positions so we can start getting a feel of who might be interested and start networking. And of course, we would still need those job descriptions approved, and we would then we would like direction to be able to develop those job descriptions to bring before the board for consideration to approve.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I have a comment. Thank you for this presentation. I like the breakdown. It's super thorough. I think my biggest thing is, especially for the community to understand when they see something like this, is that we are looking at at our central office, and this reorganization is to better fit the needs of our district. I don't know when was the last time something like this has happened, but I think it's important for us to know and move towards becoming a better Ravenswood and making sure that our central office is aligned in a way that is fitting to our current needs. And so I'm really, I really like this presentation. I like where we're going with this reorganization. I think it's absolutely needed. And I just see it being something that, you know, can better serve the needs that we currently have.
Also like to make sure that, you know, change is difficult, and it's hard to look at change on a piece of paper and know that it's going to affect our lives, and to be patient and encourage the district to be very thorough in what they're doing to make sure that this change is as smooth as possible for everyone, students, staff, and the community.
Through the chair, I'll just add that everything you guys said I agree with, and I also want to say that the last 2 years have been incredibly hard. I think 3 of us here on the board stepped into COVID, and we are now stepping out. And that is because of the leadership and the decisions that have been made through the central office team. And I just want to highlight that this is a direction that we are moving in, and it is hard and changes hard, and we hope that it's smooth, like Trustee Alexander said. And so the hope is that we continue to focus on making sure we have the right people in the right spots to continue to lead our district. And we know that that has been true in the last 2 years, and we know that that will be true going forward. And so I am excited, and I am looking forward to seeing how these things continue to get implemented as we keep moving forward. So thank you.
I also wanted to indicate too that there are some positions where there are title changes and there's individuals already in those roles, right? And there's additional responsibilities. And then there's brand new positions. And so we want to consider, you know, that's why we wanted to get direction, is so that we can cast our net wide to be able to recruit some of the most talented individuals as soon as possible and do the interview process, the recruitment and interview process as soon as possible.
So you're highlighting item 2 and 3.
Yes.
Noted. I will allot to the board, but I think my direction would be, you know, towards the yes side, just because this is the direction that we're going towards. But of course, I will give space for the rest of the board to also chime in.
Through the chair, I agree with President Latu.
Through the chair, agree.
Awesome. Also during this time, if there's any public comments. You have no public. Solomon, do we have any public comment? Okay, awesome, wonderful. Now we will move on. Thank you. To item number 9, which is from our human resources. This is the consideration to approve the job description for Assistant Superintendent of Teacher and Learning.
So yes, the trustees had an opportunity to review this document. Again, there is approving the job description, there is no fiscal impact. And again, I wanted to reiterate the opportunity to have support to our sites to really focus on tier 1 instruction that impacts all students and really focusing on those clear goals. In the past, we had our strategic plan, and in feedback from the analysis of our central office, it was needed to have clear goals that would impact students. We have a strategic plan with milestones, but we don't have goals where a child, a parent, a board member, staff members can say Ravenswood is moving in the right direction based on student progress. And that is the responsibility of the assistant superintendent, myself as well, but direct responsibility of the assistant superintendent to support school sites to achieve these goals. And then you can see the overview of the assistant superintendent key responsibilities in the document.
Do we have any questions or comments on item 9A?
Chair, sorry. Just having a side conversation. No, we're, this looks great. I just, and I mentioned this to you, Superintendent Sudaria. I'm wondering if we need to explicitly have any wording about serving the responsibilities of the superintendent in case of some happens or something. I want to include that here or not. But yeah.
I think that would be easy to add, that if we were to approve this with the petition made, definitely.
I agree. So I will entertain a motion for item 9A with the additional language.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 9A.
Thank you.
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Now we will move on to item 10A, which is the consideration to approve Resolution 21/22-18, board member excused absences. I will entertain a motion for 10A.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 10A.
I will second.
Oh, for item 10A for board member Ana Maria Polito. So there's a motion on the floor.
I second.
And then a second.
Yeah.
The resolution number 2021-2022-18, board members excused absences, whereas the ed codes allows us to be absent, et cetera.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Now we will move on to item 10B, which is board reports and communications.
Through the chair. So I just want to give an update to the board that our bond measure was accepted for the ballot. It is Measure I. Arguments have been filed as well, so that is on the website. There will be more arguments and rebuttals that will be filed. I also just want to express to our community that there is lots of information on our past bond measures and what this current bond measure is going to be doing on our website. And so if anyone has trouble accessing that, please reach out to any one of us. Thank you all for being able to be reached out to, or anyone from the district that can help you navigate to those pages. There is lots of information on there. There's also a mailer that has gone out 3 weeks ago that also talked about all of our facilities updates. And I also want to say we've seen different pieces of the budget that has been presented from the school side, from the audit side. There is an interactive budget website that is linked on our Ravenswood website that is really, really great as well. So I think there may be lots of questions that are coming up as this bond measure is on the ballot. And I hope that our community continues to be informed and uses the resources that we have very publicly and transparently provided. And also we are willing to have conversations about these things as well. So I just wanted to make that announcement. And then one other thing is that there is a vaccination clinic that is being hosted at the YMCA every Tuesday from 3 to 7 for families 5 and up to get vaccinated through the city. And so please, families, if you are not vaccinated and your children are not vaccinated yet, they have changed the timing so that it's not so late, that it's right after school. So you are able to go right after school to get those vaccinations. So, and I was there right before this board meeting. So it's there and it's available and accessible. So please check it out.
Thank you. I'll just make a quick note. I am part of a project called the East Baltimore Community Archive Project, and they had reached out just to request if we would like to participate by providing historical documents and stuff regarding the district and just the district's history. And I thought that it would be a great opportunity. And so I just wanted to bring that to the board, and we'll continue to discuss our, participation, whether that's historical documents or anything. If you have any other questions, you can just reach out to me. With that being said, as I see no other comments.
I always have one.
Oh,
To the chair, please, please. I would like to apologize if anybody tried to get to my office hours on Monday. I was having technical issues. I think it's sometimes called user interface error. The second thing that I'd like to say is, once again, I'm grateful to Paige Richards, a 4th grade teacher at Belhaven, who hosted yet another remarkable interactive math night last week at the site, all around fractions. And the neatest thing that I have to say was the class did a look at the math curriculum, looked at where the equity misalignment might be, and decided that not everybody in the world drinks lemonade and eats pizzas. And they were doing fractions for horchata and other things that were more culturally relevant to our community. So kudos to Belhaven's Paige Richards 4th grade class.
Woohoo. Any other questions or comments? As I see none, the next regular board meeting will be held on April 14, 2022. I will adjourn the RCSD governing board meeting at 9:04 p.m. Thank you.